Hello there and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Mark and I thank you so much for coming by today. Well, after 25 years of being out of the teaching game, I am back in the classroom filling in for a friend of mine who's on medical leave. So I'm having a great experience, a lot of fun. These are honors art students in high school and they're having a great time and a great experience as well. And it's really nice to be bringing all this information that I have in my career and my experience to younger people who can maybe take advantage of it for their own careers. One of the projects we're working on right now is we're doing a hand project, and what I'm teaching them is how to draw a basic hand and how to break it down into shapes, then exaggerate those shapes and create an exaggerated hand pose. It's a lot of fun and I think they're learning quite a bit. We'll take that basic sketch and we'll shade it in and we'll add some values to it and so forth, and then we'll apply color to it. And the medium that we're going to use for that color is colored pencil. And what we use here in the school system is these are the Prismacolor Scholar pencils. They're just great. I mean, they're terrific for students to learn from. They're considered a student grade pencil. But after using them a little bit, I started to ask one question. I went out and I bought these pencils here. These are the Prismacolor Premier pencils, and these cost about $60 retail, where these cost about maybe under $20 retail. And what I found was the results with these two different pencils was very similar, and I started to question, they almost feel like the same pencil. Is it the packaging that's the difference? I don't know. This one comes in a metal tin. This one's in a plastic little clamshell pack here. So what's the difference between the Prismacolor Premier pencils and the Prismacolor Scholar pencils? One is supposed to be artist grade, one is supposed to be student grade, but is there a difference and what's going on with these things? So I figured let's check it out and do a little one-on-one study here and find out exactly what the difference is between these pencils. So come on along with me and hopefully this will be informative. And again, I thank you so much for coming by. Now, before I get into the comparative study, I wanted to bring you a little bit of insight as to my background with colored pencils, starting in the 1980s with the Spectracolor pencils, the Berol Prismacolor pencils from the 90s, and even the Crayola pencils that I used to use when I was teaching young children, up to the Scholars and Premiers we use today. I love colored pencils, I've been using them for years, and I can't imagine doing many projects without using some kind of colored pencil in some fashion. Now, what I'm doing here is to bring you a well-informed opinion about the Scholars and the Premiers. I wanted to show that timeline in a timeline swatch chart. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to apply these Spectracolors first and just show you the best colored pencils that I ever owned. Now in the 1980s, I bought a set of 94 Spectracolor pencils, and these were from Faber-Castell. You might know them because today they make the Polychromos pencils, which are the highest grade artist quality pencils I think you can find on the market. I love the Polychromos, but I'm not going to get into those here. That's a discussion for another time. But these pencils were so great because they had a really soft wax, a high pigment payout, they were easy to sharpen and didn't break inside the wood barrel, and when you sharpen them, they actually really smelled good. These colors were really brilliant and they blended really well. I loved my Spectracolor pencils, but unfortunately, Berol bought out Spectracolor and discontinued the Spectracolor line. Now, when Berol bought them out, they changed the name to Prismacolor, and then they eventually merged with a company called Newell, who owns another branch which Berol fell under called Sanford. Sanford owns Sharpie, Papermate, and Rotring products. So the current version of Prismacolor pencils is owned by Sanford Corporation, or the Newell Company, and they are in the same line of products as Sharpie and Papermate and Rotring. So that just gives you some background history to these colored pencils and how this is all kind of transformed over the marketplace. The Berol Prismacolors in the 1990s weren't much different from the Spectracolor. There was a slight repackaging, but the pencils were pretty much the same. A high quality pigment payout, easy to blend, everything was pretty much the same. But by the time I was teaching young children, I needed to find an inexpensive product that could fit the budget of the school and keep me getting these products for these kids without spending a lot of money. And Crayola delivered. These products were great. I loved Crayola pencils for what they were. They weren't even quite a student grade pencil. They were just sort of a general colored pencil that anyone could use, and they required a really firm pressure to get out any kind of pigment. So what that means is the wax used in these pencils was really hard. It was filled with binders and extenders and things like that. So you weren't getting a really good quality artist grade colored pencil with Crayola. So that was my student grade experience back then. Now, in the school that I'm working at, working with Prismacolor Scholar pencils, I'm wondering, are they, the same kind of thing where there's additives and they're a harder wax? Well, that's what I wanted to find out today, and that's exactly what this test is going to show me. Now, according to Prismacolor, the Scholar pencils use a combination of soft and hard wax, where the Premiers only use soft wax like the old Spectracolors. The hard wax, they say, is added to, and I quote, aid developing artists as they learn the right amount of pressure to apply when working with colored pencils. Well, to me that's a little pretentious, but maybe that's how they're justifying adding the hard wax. I don't know why pressure would matter if you had soft or hard wax, but that's what they said. They also claim that the Premier pencils have a greater percentage of pigment resulting in more vibrant colors. And that may be true, but it's really hard to tell what that means, a greater percentage. That's like saying, buying the store brand cookies for $2 over the Oreos that cost $5 because the Oreos have more of an Oreo flavor. Well, it's hard for me to say. I'll just kind of go with that. Now, what I'm doing here, this is a rubber eraser test to see how these pencils will smudge using a rubber eraser. And why is that important? Because if they smudge a lot, that means they're a higher pigment. If they smudge just a little, then there's not as much pigment. You can see the Spectracolor pencils smudge a ton. Even the Berol Prismacolors smudged a ton. Crayolas not so much, and the Prismacolor Scholars and Premiers seem to smudge pretty much the same amount. So what I'm going to do next is apply little bits of watercolor. First a neutral gray tone, just to see how this watercolor goes through the pencil to the paper and will bead around the wax. So the water's not going to go into the wax, it's going to go around it into the paper. So I'll do that with the neutral gray, and I'll add some colors as well. One thing you'll notice is at the end of this little demonstration, the pencil that actually showed up most through the watercolor was the Crayola pencils, which surprised me actually. That tells me that there's a lot more going on in those pencils, like hard wax, fillers, binders, and so forth, to allow that pencil to bead up through the water, which is not a bad thing. It is what it is, but you can see that the Spectracolor and the Premiers do just fine. Now this is a blending test. I'm using a colorless blender. You can use different pencils to blend, like white pencils or flesh tone pencils or whatever, even black will blend. But the colorless blender is great because it's just blending the pencil that's on the paper. You can see the Spectracolor blends really well, kind of like the eraser smudge test, and the yellow in the orange color is coming right up through. That doesn't happen with many of the other colors except for the Prismacolor Premiers, which tells me that there is a higher pigment in there. Now in a side-by-side chart, these all look pretty much the same, but we're focusing on the Scholars and Premiers. And if we put those side by side, you'll notice that there's not a lot of difference. Maybe a higher bit of pigment is present in the Premiers, but I wouldn't say it's too much to notice. So let's check back right after this coffee break and find out more. So while the timeline swatch chart was a great way for me to sort of just evaluate all these different colored pencils I've been using over the years and kind of gauge them against the Scholars and the Premiers, it's a field test to mimic the conditions in a classroom that's really going to tell me whether or not these two pencils are just a scam or whether there's a significant enough difference to justify the cost in these two pencils. So what I'm doing here is I inked in these two rainbow fish, and I want to see how the pencils work over the ink, as well as using student grade paper, student grade watercolors, and a student grade water brush to see how they all work together in classroom conditions. And I have to say the Scholar pencils handle really well. They have a nice laydown, the pigment payout, it looks great, and I'm very pleased with how these pencils work over the watercolor and over the ink. There's no problems, and again, I'm very pleased with the results with the Scholar pencils. So going into the Premier pencils, right from the moment I put the blue pencil down, I could tell right away that there was a significant difference in the waxy feel. The Premier pencils are definitely a bit softer than the Scholar pencils. I was surprised because I didn't expect to find that. Also, the pigment payout of the Premier pencils is significantly brighter. They say that there's a greater percentage of pigment resulting in more vibrant colors. Well, I have to say that that's true. It's a more vibrant color. It's not huge though, that's the thing. It's not a huge difference, but it's significant enough to make me say, okay, this is a little bit different and a little bit higher of a quality than the Scholar pencils. So after applying this watercolor down, I'm going back in with the pencils. And again, the color looks great on these. The Premiers feel really good in my hand, and that waxy, soft waxy feel feels really great. I was very satisfied, and even when blending with the white colored pencil, they both look terrific, but I have to say, the Premier just felt a little softer, blending was a little easier, and even the black pencil popped a little bit better. So, looking at these side by side after scanning them, you can see there's a significant difference with the Premier, where it's a little bit more vibrant and bright over the Scholar pencil. Again, the Scholars look fantastic, but the Premiers are just bumped up a little bit more. Even in the gray tones, you can see the contrast there. So, here's the question. Okay, Mr. Art Teacher Guy, what are the big differences, and are these Prismacolors a scam? Well, let's look at the Scholar side of things. These Scholars are available at larger retailers like Walmart and Target. You can get them almost anywhere. They come in a fold-out plastic blister pack. They have a good to high quality pigment payout. They lay well on a variety of paper types like student grade or artist grade. And the pressure you use for them is pretty much expected from light to firm. They're easy to sharpen, store, and maintain. They work well with other mediums like ink and watercolor. But the big thing is the inexpensive price point. That's the big one for me. The Premier pencils, on their side, they're available at most of the expected retailers like AC Moore and Michaels. They come in a durable metal tin, which is in more expensive packaging. They have a high quality pigment payout, which surprised me. They lay well also on a variety of paper types. They require the same expected pressure from light to firm. They're easy to sharpen, store, and maintain just like the other pencils. They work well with other mediums, except I would even say they work really well, but they're really, really expensive. So the main difference is the blister pack versus the metal tin, the quality of the pigment, and the price point. So for my money, the color difference is not significant enough to make me want to go for the Premiers. I would be just as happy with the Scholars. The winner as far as quality goes, the Premiers are a higher quality, maybe closer to artist grade, but the Scholar wins based on price. So there is no scam, there is no funky business going on. They're definitely two different colored pencils, and they're both great at what they do. It's just a matter of whether you're willing to spend extra money, up to $30 more, for a little bit more pigment and a little bit softer wax. Anyway, thank you so much for watching today. I hope this was an informative video for you. I know it was informative for me. I learned a lot about these two pencils. I'd love to hear your experiences with these pencils down below. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, and God bless.